We're going to mix a larger quantity of plaster for our last carving assignment. I've got bucket in the water, I've got containers, the same plaster of Paris that hardens in 20 minutes, but I want to talk to you about bigger containers. I've chosen kind of medium-sized, heavy corrugated cardboard box. If you use something like a shoebox that's thin cardboard, it's going to get too wet and will change shape on you. So I've chosen a heavy cardboard box, but if you hold it up to the light, it has little holes in the corner where it's been folded. So you need to make sure to thoroughly tape the box along any of the open seams. I've put duct tape here. There was a little damage on the side of the box. I've taped that up. And I've also taped down the flaps all the way around, which makes it extra strong. And then it won't change shape when the liquid plaster is poured into it. Another option would be to find some kind of thin plastic container. This one's really flexible, so it shouldn't be too hard to cut away from the plaster. Don't use like a heavy bucket to set your plaster and let it get hard, because it'll be too difficult to cut the heavy plastic bucket away. So this one's thin and flexible. You could use something like a 1-gallon milk container. That's cold water. Remember always to start with cold water, and think about volume. I've got about 6 inches of water in here, so when I finish I'm going to have about double that in liquid plaster. So I'm going to take the dry plaster and sift it in, and it always takes more dry plaster than you imagine it will. So if you want to make a fairly large chunk of plaster to do your final carving with, I would recommend this 25-pound bag of plaster. The art stores will sell small containers like 5 or 10 pounds, but you can see that won't go very far. It might be fine to do your experimental small shapes with. Okay, so the plaster is settling into the water a little bit slower now. So that means I'm getting close. All right, there's the start of an island, but that's going to sink in too, so I'm going to put a few more scoops in. And the more dry material you get into the water, the stronger your plaster will be. So let's see how that's going. There's an island. Oops. I think I'll try a little bit more in there. Sprinkle it around the edges. Okay. I can get a little bit more in. All right, that's a good island. Put a little bit more around the edges. But that's an island that's not sinking or floating, so you know you have enough dry plaster in the water. So the next thing is, I just stick my hand in and start mixing. You'll feel the lumps. So you can see there's like really lumpy and gooey in the beginning. I've never had anybody have a problem. I have one person who got a little skin irritation from the plaster, but it's non-toxic and it'll wash out of your clothes. It's easy to wash off your skin after it's dry. So I'm mixing, I'm squeezing the lumps, and I'm also mixing top to bottom. And I'm trying not to froth it up. I don't want it to become really bubbly. If you get bubbles in your plaster, when you're carving it, it'll be little empty spaces, little hollow spaces. That's what the bubbles will turn into inside of your solid plaster shape. So It's getting nice. It's nice and thick. I do have a limited time again. You don't want to be mixing for more than, you know, it says 8 or 10 minutes on the instruction as far as keeping it liquid. It will start to slowly harden up, and the hardening time on the Plaster of Paris is 20 minutes. So I feel very few lumps now. When I look on my hand, it's fairly even, so I think I'm ready to pour. So I can take my hand, so it won't be such a mess all over the place. Scrape off a little bit of the plaster, pick up the bucket, and gently pour it. Oops, I'm creating bubbles if I pour too fast. Pour it into the box. I don't see anything leaking. You gotta make sure that tape is on there good. Alright, let's see how I did on my estimate of volume. Pretty close. Alright, I can take my hand here and scoop a little bit more out of the bucket. Let me get down and do this. Get a little more off the sides of the bucket, bottom of the bucket. So you don't want to wait too long to pour, because if it starts to set up while you're pouring, or before you start pouring, you won't be able to shake any of the bubbles out. Alright, so I've got most of it out of the bucket. I want to jiggle my box and see how many bubbles I can get to come up and pop. My floor here isn't exactly flat. It's not too far off. Okay, I don't know if you can see the bubbles that are coming up and popping. A few. Okay, so I want to get back and clean out my bucket before the plaster hardens. So just taking some paper towels again and trying to get as much, and if possible all of this wet plaster. If you find a container like this one, you could, since it's very flexible and you'll be able to cut it off of your plaster, you could fill it less than halfway with water and then sift your plaster in, and then when you put your hand in to mix, you'll be close to the top, but you could just let it set and harden in that container. That's a pretty good shape to do my carving out of. You can see the edge of the box is bowing out a little bit, even though I've reinforced it with the flaps. So you want to really make sure you have a strong box to start out with. And that's the basic how-to to cast the larger shape for the final project. So have, again, some messy fun. Wait till the plaster gets hard before you wash your hand in the sink. That's it. Bye-bye.